Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is Troy, and in today's video we're going to be doing one of my favorite things, showing the growth rate and progression of one of my fish. In today's video we're going to be focusing on the Bala Shark. I have one in my 180 gallon aquarium here, and he's a pretty big fish now. I got him when he was tiny about 2.5 years ago, and I'm going to show the full progression from that point until what he is today. The Bala Shark is one of my favorite non-cichlids in this hobby, and I'm excited to talk about it today. So guys, let's dive right in. Okay, so here's my 180 gallon South American cichlid tank, but the one oddball in this tank is my Bala Shark. I've had him for about 2.5 years now. He's been doing really well with these different cichlids. He's had a very steady growth rate in those 2.5 years, and he's been one of the most enjoyable fish in this tank. Since he is a Bala Shark, I did name him Bruce.
Hello.
But they actually aren't a shark at all. They are in the barb family, and because of this, they have a lot of schooling behaviors, so many people will actually recommend that you keep these in a school. But my Bala Shark has been in this tank with different cichlids on his own, and he's been doing really well, always very active, swimming back and forth. The cichlids don't bother him. He eats aggressively. He's an eating machine, really, and it's just a really enjoyable fish to keep, and I think in the right situation you can definitely keep these on their own. So one of the main things to know about the Bala Shark is they do get very large. In most situations they'll get up to 1 foot long, sometimes even up to 14 inches, and they have a long lifespan if the proper care is given. They can sometimes live for over 10 years, so that plus the overall size of the fish and their active swimming back and forth means that you will want a very large tank to house them. That's one of the main problems with the Bala Shark, is that the average fish keeper or beginner may not know how big these fish get and that they need a 6-foot tank or larger, and sometimes that can definitely lead to problems. So with that being said, let's check out my Bala Shark when I picked him up about 2.5 years ago when he was tiny. So 2.5 years ago in March of 2019 is whenever I picked up Bruce. I got him from one of my local pet stores. He was tiny, probably about 1.5 inches long and pencil thin, and he started off in my 38 gallon grow out tank, but shortly after he upgraded to a 75 gallon where he stayed for about a year. So about a month later he was in my 75 gallon tank, and he was barely big enough to even eat a bloodworm. You'll likely see my electric blue acara in a lot of pictures and videos throughout these 2.5 years as I pick them up at the exact same time. So after being in the 75 gallon tank for a few months, you can see that he's just slightly bigger. He may have grown about 1 inch since I had him, so that's about 1 inch in growth in that first 3 months. He was definitely enjoying the space in the 75 gallon, always swimming back and forth, but I knew he was going to get bigger, and I had plans for a bigger tank down the line. And then about 3 to 4 months later in October, you can see he's about 4.5 inches now, so he grew another inch in those 3 months. He started putting on a little more size in his body. He doesn't look as pencil thin as he used to, so overall just starting to come into his own as we move into November of 2019. I've had him for about 8 months at this point, and he's always been one of the most personable fish in the tank, front and center, always eating. Bala Sharks are usually one of the easiest fish to feed because they eat everything, but I really like the growth that I was seeing on this Bala Shark. So next we're going to jump another 3 or 4 months where we definitely had a growth spurt. Those first 3 or 4 months spans, he was growing about 1.5 inches per 3 months, but in this span he definitely grew about 2.5 inches and put on a lot of size. This was actually the year mark for me first getting Bruce, so if you do the math, he went from 1.5 inches or so to just about 6, maybe even slightly over 6 inches, which is about 4.5 inches of growth in his first year. That also comes with adding more size to his body, which is also not as pencil thin as it used to be. And then a few months later is when I finally set up my 180 gallon aquarium, which was a huge upgrade for him, and it couldn't have come at a better time. Not only was he about a 6.5 inch fish, but he was also swimming back and forth so much that I felt like the 75 gallon just wasn't quite large enough. Another thing to note about the Bala Shark at this point is that his dorsal and caudal fin are very large at this point, so they definitely look like a shark in your tank, and it's totally an appeal of this fish. And anytime I have company, that's always one of the fish people ask about because it looks like a shark. So as we move into August of 2020, Bruce here was about 7 inches in total length and definitely has some size in his body now. As always, he's an eating machine. He also competes with my Oscar in terms of volume of just how much they can eat. So now we're in December of last year, and although he's still growing, it's at a pretty gradual and steady rate. He's probably about 7.5 inches at this point, and as you can see, he just competes for all the food with all these different cichlids. I've never had an issue with him or any of my other cichlids when it comes to feeding or aggression. Overall, they've been great tank mates. And then in February of last year, I would say he's still around that 7.5 inch mark, but he's put on a lot of size in his body. As you can see, he's probably about 4 inches tall if you include that dorsal fin. So then as we move into April of this year, this is about 6 months ago, Bruce is now about 8 inches in total length. That means in the 2 years that I've had him, he's gone from 1.5 to 8 inches, and he's put on a lot of size within his body. Here you can see Bruce being a very aggressive eater. He'll gladly accept food off the surface, sinking pellets. He'll also scour the sand after a feeding to get any leftovers off of that bottom. And something that's really cool about the Bala Shark is you can sometimes hear them chewing and the clicking that they make with their mouth. And then a couple months later, in June of this year, you can see Bruce is looking great. A lot of the cichlids in this tank have also grown quite a bit since I set up this 180-gallon aquarium, which is really great to see. Bruce is quickly becoming the largest in the tank though, along with the Oscar. So from this point, and just in the summer of this year, Bruce was definitely around 8.5 inches, and he was starting to push towards that 9 to 10 inch mark coming soon. And then once we get to today, he's all of 9 inches, possibly even a little bit more. I can't get him to stay still to get a good measurement, but he is just one of the largest in the tank. He probably would be the largest if it wasn't for the true parrot, who had quite a bit of a head start in terms of size. But I expect the Oscar to maybe outgrow the Bala Shark in terms of total size, but those two will likely be the biggest in the tank for the long term. I expect Bruce to continue growing just a bit each year through the rest of his life. It'll definitely be cool to see him at that 12 inch to maybe even up to 14 inches in total length one day. And we'll be sure to provide updates and progress on this channel so you can see Bruce regularly. He's in almost every one of my videos that I do just because he's always swimming around and active. Sometimes he's just in the background, but the main thing to know about the Bala Shark, just like Bruce here, is they do grow fairly large, and if you're going to keep one, just make sure you have the tank size to do it. Okay guys, that does it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed seeing the growth rate of this Bala Shark. If you'd like to see us do a similar video on any of our other fish, make sure to leave that down in the comments section below. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week.